Um, but the real work started when I was working with the Village World team, where we had the opportunity to work with small business retailers, and that's where the real reality of small business and their under resources, to improve the way that they not only present their business but the way they run their business. That was when the moment was seeded that they really do need help, and really don't have any access to design or designers, and often don't even understand the role that design could play for their business. So that's where my business was born, where, in that time, in the last decade, as you mentioned, Liz, we had the privilege really of working with a lot of small businesses. I'll take you through some examples of work we've done, and how these are often very simple ideas, very, very easy to do, quite cost effective, which I think is the most important aspect, because we really want to be able to see a return on investment. And that's where my real passion is. What can we do without spending too much, but to achieve maximum results? The businesses love it, because sometimes they don't have to spend a lot of money. And in often cases, we don't have a huge budget to spend if it's a program that's developed with either an association or with council. So how can we extend that funding to make it, go as far as we possibly can? So I won't delay any further, because I know we've got lots to cover, lots to talk about. I'll just quickly share my screen. It's got a few slides to show. Hopefully this works this time. We did test it. Can we all see a slide with a really colourful mural? Yes, great. So shop fronts in place, and I really want to just link it back to place, because I think the shop front itself has a very important role to play when it comes to the success and activity of a place. So we'll look at how we can, really link the two together. Few things that we'll be showcasing tonight, some shopfront ideas and how we can do that quite cost effectively. Ideas around vacant shop fronts, but also inactive shop fronts. So they don't have to be vacant per se, but they might not really have much interaction with the street. Ideas for roller shutters, some window display ideas for past displays, and potentially using art in a way to identify a place. So a few examples around those topics. I just want to also really acknowledge that I am not a placemaker, and I'm not even going to pretend that I am, but I think the real placemakers, the unsung heroes, are actually business owners. They don't even realize that they play that role, but they are the ones that bring the personality, they bring the essence to the place through their business. And so with that in mind, their business presentation, the way they operate the business, the way they present it, and the way it faces into the street has a really big role to play. So I think where we can support them in marrying the interface between their shop front and the place that they inhabit, I think there's a real opportunity here that sometimes are often untapped. Why shop fronts? Why am I so passionate about shop fronts? Well, for that very reason, simply the role they play. If we take away all our businesses, take away all these shop fronts from a street or a precinct, we're not left with much, really. With the soul essentially has been removed from a place. So our businesses actually are integral to the success of a place. Now, there's no question that the role of online retailing is going to keep growing and changing, but I don't think that we can ever really truly replicate that desire to meet in a physical place. So our role is to preserve these businesses that are struggling. Our role is to, to help them to survive and not to thrive and not just simply survive. So how do we do this, and how are the ways that we can support them when it's already challenging enough as it is to retail in a very difficult and challenging competitive space? Some examples, some of you may recognise some of these places. They might be in precincts that you manage, they might be within your municipality. So I hope it's exciting for you to see some of the work that we've been able to work together on. So this is a recent shop front that was part of a program in a small precinct. It was piloted in Melton South. Why I love this example is because this shop front is, while it's not vacant, it's very inactive. We've got fixtures that face inwards. There's no display. There's a myriad of different signage. and some unloved areas, you know, where they've just allowed the shop front to weather and deteriorate over time. So a very simple solution is paint. So just painting to then draw the eye towards the main sign, using signage and photography to essentially cover the window. We're not changing the way that business operates. We're simply disguising what they don't want people to see, but also advertising what is on offer. Other issues that we often come across are the mishmash of signage that shop fronts tend to have, because over time, instead of going for a more coordinated approach, a lot of businesses will just end up adding things like a band-aid. You know, oh, this sign fell down, I'll just put another sign up. Oh, we've got a promotion, here's another sign on the window. It's just a mishmash of styles and color and textures, and often at the mercy of whichever sign writer that they've been appointed at the time. So offering that design service and a very coordinated approach gives it a much cleaner finish. The cost is the same. Like if they were to engage a sign writer and did the same thing, it wouldn't cost them any differently. It's just the way that we approach the process. Vacant spaces are sometimes just simply blank wall, and that can't be helped. It's a big site, you know, like a big bowling alley. So other ways that we can encourage the business owner to look beyond just their door, beyond just their main sign, and beyond their interior, and taking advantage of big slabs of empty spaces and using that to their advantage, whether it's using it, you know, to draw people's attention towards the entry or to highlight, you know, what their business has to offer. Nothing like seeing newspaper on windows to really turn you off. This actually isn't a vacant space, but we see a lot of this in empty shops that are, you know, waiting to be leased, or they've just simply been empty for many years. This actually isn't an empty shop. It's actually the extension of the shop. Whether you can see the entrance to the right of the window, but it just looks awful. Newspapers from about 10 years ago. So we were able to work with council and the local historical society, dug up some beautiful old historical photos and use that to cover these inactive windows. Decals, the cost of them are quite low cost in the grand scheme of things, and paint. So very simple solution, but also tying in a more layered approach and bringing the history of the place to this inactive window space. Another example of, you know, using imagery again, this is Little India. So with a place like Little India, we've got instant inspiration. We've got this cultural layer that we can bring out. And so as part of the activation of empty spaces, City of Grand Dandenong not only covered windows with beautiful imagery related back to the cultural element, but also brought colour and life. So we've got, you know, colourful discs hung in empty windows with a fan blowing behind it. So these discs will move in the wind, the generated wind, and a trail of neon lights with a selection of pattern and colour that is actually installed in all the windows of all the businesses along that strip. So come day or night, this precinct just comes alive, and there are no gaps, so to speak. There are no vacant gaps to the eye. So a really lovely and, you know, layered approach to activating these vacant spaces. A space that often gets overlooked because many people don't see it, it's after dark, are roller shutters. And surprisingly or unsurprisingly, we see a lot of roller shutters in our precincts. And unfortunately, this can happen and does happen. So this is in Heidelberg West, and a unique project came about last year where we were able to work with a cluster of shops, so 8 shops almost next door to each other in this precinct of about 12 shops, all had roller shutters and all were attacked. So we worked with the businesses, we worked with council and curated a suite of designs that reflected the local flora, reflected the Rediscover of a Local campaign that they also launched last year as part of revitalising businesses in City of Banyule. And we work with painters, and it's amazing what you can do with paint and decals. And the smile on that trader's face really does say it all. And this has now been 6 months and not a touch of graffiti has been detected on any of these roller shutters. So it's amazing that, you know, like what we can do. And we've also essentially created a bit of an art trail almost accidentally, but it's also brought this whole precinct alive after dark, and also on Sunday when pretty much every single shop is closed. So it has certainly shifted the perception of the place simply by adding colour and design. In window displays, another area that I'm super passionate about, and feel that there's a little bit of underskilling with our small business owners, is windows. My general advice is to keep it clean, keep it neat, and change your stock. That's it. We don't have to do big, grand, my window type installations all the time, but by rotating stock, that's enough change to create some interest. And if possible, and we advise a lot of our business owners to do this, is to have a handful of special windows a year. It could be Christmas, Mother's Day, Easter. You can mark it all off in a calendar and see where the gaps are. But having a special window gives them time to work towards it, so they can do something like this, where it's potentially be interactive, could potentially be a little bit more of a labour of love. But also we do encourage businesses, if they have the capacity to, is to hire a professional 6 or 10 times a year and just have someone do it for them, so that it's done regularly and professionally, so that this sort of effect can be achieved. And Homey Instincts do certainly hire professionals on a regular basis. We also encourage businesses to participate in training where possible. And I know Mainstreet Australia offer lots of opportunities for training, and we do as well, either through traders associations or through council. But sometimes it's just some simple skills. We don't need to have the big brand installations. It's sometimes about just knowing how to group products together, knowing how to use space and colour, knowing where to bring in, other elements, other add-on merchandise, so that you go from a display that is plonked, literally plonked on the left, in a very large window, to grouped into a smaller window, so the larger window could be used for other bigger item furniture in this furniture store. So training and upskilling, I think, is another area that we could certainly support our businesses, our small businesses. Now, I see Cinzia in the room. Hi, Cinzia. This is one of Cinzia's projects in City of Brimbank, and it was a really challenging project, trying to shift the mindset of businesses who are used to operating a certain way. And the way they used to operate is, I'll just put my stock, my fresh produce, in cardboard boxes, foam boxes, on milk crates on the street. And then along come council, and they completely upgraded the footpath with beautiful public seating and beautiful garden beds. And then we've got this sort of third world display on the footpath. So an opportunity arose where we can work with the business owners as well as council to pilot a more coordinated approach for the businesses to showcase their products. So these carts, these display carts, are made locally. They utilise the colour palette that's been used in the new street furniture, but they offer a mobile, easy to use, practical platform for businesses to then do what they do best, which is to trade. So another way of activating that sort of that footpath aspect, and encouraging businesses to look at it as an extension of their shop, and not just a space to plonk the stock that they don't care about, the stock that they don't mind people stealing, or which is often the case. Other vacant spaces or inactive spaces are the bookends of main streets. The shops that are the last one or the first one, often are attacked by graffiti, but they're also usually positioned in a very prominent position that they could be a very good spot for creating that sort of gateway entry point, or a real sort of visual draw card into a precinct or a little main street shopping strip. So Churchill Ave in Braybrook is a really small little shopping strip of about 14 shops, and the bookended walls have been attacked, as you can see. So rather than just putting a mural, we thought there was an opportunity here to showcase the new branding with a bit of an artistic approach to sort of wayfinding. If using artists, then it's also about that sort of curating the right artist for the right place. This particular artist was chosen specifically for the style of work that he does, and it really brought the street to life using art and colour. So again, a really nice way to activate a very boring old wall that faces a car park that again was vandalised with some really unsavoury language. So again, this was a nice way to create that gateway, and also a a sort of a visual wayfinding in a sense, to showcase the retail mix in the area. So a few little next step sort of actions that could potentially be unpacked further tonight. Conducting a visual audit, whether you do it or you do it with the business owners or you do it as a group. Walking up and down the street with a camera and some notes. It's amazing what you see when you stand outside the shop, across the road from the shop, coming from the left and coming from the right. And I love doing this with the business owner because a lot of the times they enter from the back and they don't even see their shop fronts. This will also help you identify the number of businesses that might need some support, whether it's through shopfront improvement or some other visual makeover. Training is, I think, crucial and ongoing, and this process is but one in a myriad of ways that we can support our businesses. Offering incentives. So a lot of the shopfront improvements that you see, we've incentivied it by offering some funding towards implementation. So it sometimes can only happen when we can physically do the work for them, with them. 10 years ago, we started this program. We prepared some designs, some recommendations for shop owners, and 5 years later, the report's still in there next to their till and nothing's changed. So we retweaked the program so that we actually do bring some funding into the program so we can do the work for them. Perhaps you might pilot one and do that as a catalyst. And there could be other ways that you can encourage businesses to maintain their shop fronts, whether it's through ongoing cleaning, and we've got little kits that we've created that we give to businesses so that it encourages them to keep that going. Now, I think I might have taken a little bit of extra time, so I do apologise. I'm going to quit it now so that we can hear more from Angela.
That's okay, Ching Ching. No, we'll allow it. I didn't dare interrupt because it was just such fantastic work and such great examples. And I'm sure everyone will agree that visually, like, it just makes such a difference. It's just so impactful. Yeah, I love everything that you presented, and some really vibrant and exciting examples. So thank you for that. But we'll move now straight into our next speaker. And before we do that, I'll just another reminder: if you've got any questions or any observations that you'd like to make on Ching Ching's presentations, please just put it in the chat now, and then we will have a Q&A after Angela's presentation. So I would now like to introduce you all to Angela Simons, who many of you would know. She's very familiar to Mainstreet Australia. She's a CEO with Renew Australia, and she leads that organisation, and she works very closely with Mainstreet's councils and also property representatives. And her job is all about activating vacant spaces and bringing back to life otherwise underutilised spaces. So she does a lot of project and place-based work all around Australia, and we are absolutely thrilled to have her here tonight. Angela, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz, and great prezzo, Ching Ching. It was fantastic, and thank you so much for having me this evening. So, as Liz so eloquently said, my name is Angela. I am the CEO of Renew Australia, and I guess I'll start with a little bit of a background. So, I'll take you through what Renew does in a moment, but I guess my story began actually in tourism. I have been lucky enough to work all over Australia and all over the world in small towns and regional centres, working with communities to bring people to visit, to make it unique or to enjoy a space differently. And when I left the hotel and tourism industry, I came back to my hometown of Melbourne, where I grew up in Williamstown, a town that is very lucky to have a small town feel within moments to the city. And I really understood then how unique it was to have independent traders all collectively gathered in a busy main street, which was fantastic. I got the opportunity to start working with Renew, as my specialty is actually working within property on individual license agreements. Very boring stuff, largely related to strata, but it turns out it allowed me to really embrace my passion for the creative industries and to assist Mainstreets to bring a little bit of interest, a new reason to visit. And I like to think it's when I put my destination marketing hat on is when we're curating a street of vacant spaces. So I'm going to do a short presentation today I'm sure we've actually got so much more to say, like Ching Ching does, than just our prezos, because we do so many jobs, small and large. And I think it's really important to understand when we think about vacant to vibrant, we really need to consider that there isn't one fix-all solution or project. And when we look at the projects that you see going around in other cities or other towns or communities, we really need to make sure that we're tailoring them to the town, city, or street that we're working with. And we make sure that we do trial and error, experiment, use a proof of concept, and then expand from there. So here comes the technical moment. So I'll try and share my screen and see how we go. Just one moment, guys. Right, can I get a thumbs up if you can see that first page? Fantastic. I love the participation. Thank you so much. Okay. So as I've just mentioned, we're here today to talk about vacant to vibrant, but as Ching Ching has said, it's not just vacant. Sometimes it's inactive. Sometimes it's places in a meanwhile state. So they might be awaiting development, they might be awaiting a new owner, or they could just be sitting there in a family trust with no one who really has a decision about what they'd like to do with that building. And I see a few giggles there. So I think that might be familiar to a few people on our call today. So look, a little bit about Renew Australia. We are a not-for-profit with DGR1 status, and we're also a social enterprise certified by Social Traders. Our core purpose to exist is actually to provide creative enterprises an opportunity to trial an idea with minimal risk and minimal overheads, but that has a flow-on effect. And that really does mean that we work with communities to catalyse the creative industries and improve main streets at the same time. And we do so by leveraging underutilised spaces and transforming them into a creative hub. Renew Australia exists because of the great success of Renew Newcastle. Many of you would have heard of Marcus Westbury, our founder, and the wonderful work he did in Newcastle for many years. But Renew Australia was established because a lot of towns and cities tried to replicate the program almost identically. And unfortunately, every town is different and they often didn't work. So Renew Australia was founded to create toolkits to allow the ideas, the learnings and the wins of a project like Newcastle to be tailored to the context of the place or space that others are working with. So we do space activation, which I'll go through a bit in a moment, but we also do lots of other things, very similar to Ching Ching in the idea that sometimes we just need to change the facade and its presence to actually draw the eye in a positive way. So on the screen here, you'll see we've done some murals. We do art decals, where we did a fabulous project with the City of Melbourne during COVID, where we had a GPS map of all of the art galleries around the city, and that happened to be all the vacant spaces. And we had wonderful agents sign on because we made sure that their logos and their leasing panels were very visible in the process. And we also do other types of activations. So when a space can't necessarily be occupied, we do things like projection activations, etc. Some of you might recognise the site on the far left, and this is an example of a space that cannot be occupied. It's the old Poison nightclub on Fitzroy Street. And I know we've got Liv on the call today who knows this site very well. It's been a bone of contention for this street and the traders for a really long time. Always a hub of graffiti, but also a hub of antisocial, nefarious activities. I think we can all be blunt enough to say a fair bit of drug taking, unfortunately, in this particular site. So we worked with the property owner to board up the space to make it safe so it couldn't be accessed. And then we had one of our wonderful resident artists on Fitzroy Street do this 2-story mural, which has got the community talking and engaging and finally saying something really positive about this vacant space. I'm going to show you a really quick video just so I can, it's easier than trying to tell you what it looks like vacant and what it looks like after. This is a video we did about a year and a half into the Renew Fitzroy Street project. The Renew Fitzroy Street project is run by Renew Australia, but it's actually co-funded by Council and the Fitzroy Street Business Association. So it's been a wonderful project to be working on, and it's certainly brought a lot of life. So I'll press play and I'll come back to you shortly. So I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of what we do. So yes, we do murals. Yes, we do decals. Yes, we do projections. But really the main aim of the game for Renewal Australia is occupying vacant space. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because what we're ultimately trying to do is give opportunities to new creative industries. But we're also really trying to support the existing traders. And very much like Ching Ching said, they are the personalities of our street. They are the reasons people visit. And what we're trying to do is create occupancy, bums on seats, drive local foot traffic to the area. And it's not just new business that you're looking for when you're trying to drive foot traffic. It's the rediscovery of a street. It's a different reason to go left instead of right, to try a new coffee shop. And by having a program such as Renew or such as the roller shutter gallery that Ching Ching's talking about, it gives people a reason to actually stop in their own space and rediscover something that they were too busy to see before. So as we've mentioned, increasing occupancy and driving foot traffic is a really important part of this project, but we're also looking to promote a local main street or an area by showing new exciting businesses that are opening up there, that are incubating, and they themselves want to heavily promote their business and in turn promote the street, the precinct or the town. By occupying vacant space, we're creating a vibrant, marketable precinct. And that's really, really important because vacancy spreads like a blight. I think we've all seen it wherever we've been, cities, towns, when the post office leaves, the newsagent next door might close, the schnitty shop next door might then not have their regular traffic and they begin to close. And what that does is reduce the commercial equity in that space, because when a property owner or agent is trying to rent the space, the foot traffic has decreased. So simply just by putting someone in there, short or long term, we can help maintain that foot traffic, that activity, and hopefully also maintain the commercial value of that precinct by keeping it active. And I think most of you on this call would understand how hard it is when our main streets and precincts lose those anchor tenants, the post office, the bank, the Centrelink even. And I think it's really important that we think about what we use those spaces for in the future. So we also like to think of our projects as a demonstration of future use, not just to the community, but also to the property owners who might not have necessarily considered an application as a tenant from a soap maker before, because they haven't really thought about how that's a viable business. But truth be told, here in Australia, we have a thriving creative economy. And it's that economy that places like Melbourne, where I am today, trade on in terms of tourism. But we don't give spaces for artists and makers to incubate. We only put them on a pedestal when they have established themselves and their brand. And so we're trying to demonstrate the future use that creative entrepreneurs, social enterprises, and start out smaller ideas can grow and can actually contribute to a thriving community. Much like Ching Ching was saying, we're really looking to make sure these sites are made engaging and cared for and kept open. And it's really interesting how anecdotally we see a reduction of vandalism and antisocial behaviour. It's very hard to measure that type of response. Like Ching Ching was mentioning earlier, 6 months, no vandalism. We don't have the funding or the money to go out and do all the surveys and the monitoring of such things. But just through observation, we can see changes in a street or an area. And certainly we saw that in our Geelong project some years ago, where we were right near a regional bus stop, which had a lot of comings and goings that turned out to be quite negative for the council, the town and the area, and traders were moving away from the site. The site we originally took on was a double-fronted old bank that had graffiti, glass scratched. It was often urinated on. It was a pretty difficult place. All the locals would just stand up and lean against the windows and smoke, and it certainly wasn't appealing for a commercial tenant. But what really surprised a lot of the community was, as soon as we moved in, cleaned those windows, put up signage, turned on the light, and were there minimum 5 days a week, even those so-called roughhouses stepped back and said, "Oh, wow, that looks cool. What are you doing?" And it put us in a position where we could say, hey, this is what we do. Hey, by the way, do you mind not smoking in front of our doorway? And we'd often find that people would immediately oblige, because when you care for something, when you show that you're putting your energy and your love into it, often people return that respect. And as I've mentioned earlier, the improved business and community confidence by keeping the street and precinct alive, because we have a lot of main streets. We have moved away from 5 main streets in every city, thanks to the wonderful gentrification of our suburbs and our outer metropolitan ring. And we need to find new uses to keep places alive that traditionally might have been the shopping precinct for clothes, or the eat street like Lygon Street. We need to make sure we're always thinking about the future, not just the now. So I guess really some key takeaways are, no one place is the same. I think we've all talked about that, and really understanding that space. And very much like Ching Ching was saying, is one of the first things I do when I deal with a council or a traders association is we walk the street. And the first thing I usually say is, look up. And before we even consider the vacancy issue that we have on the ground floor, we then have to think about the compounded issue of the vacant first floor, second floor, and third floor. And it's often an area that we don't really think about. But when we go back to that really basic idea of bums on seats, if those spaces are empty, not just the visual ones below, you won't really have a lot of activity. And if we just assume that everyone's the same and we've all got the same vacant shops, we're never going to move forward. So certainly think about the context of that place and take it in, and try and take it in from a fresh perspective. And once again, tailor it to your community. Not all communities need large-scale intervention. Sometimes it just needs one shop with the lights on, turned on, saying, hi, I'm here, this is something new. Or perhaps it's a projection or an art trail. I think with what we do, community connections are absolutely essential. When we run a project, either train a town, city or community to run the project themselves, such as in Burnie down in Tassie, where we trained the Business Association, Northwest Business Association, to run their own project, or in Wagga Wagga with Eastern Riverina Arts. So it's not some lady from Melbourne popping in and going, hey, I can fix your problem. What we're trying to do is actually capacity build the local people and the local traders in the community to do it themselves. And so you can't just assume you have an answer. You must engage and collaborate and be genuine. A lot of towns and communities have consultants come in who have a sweeping opinion of what they can do from a desktop study. But I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to meet the traders. And don't do it at lunchtime in a busy cafe. Think about how you're engaging with your traders. Think about when it's busy for them and when it's convenient for them. Because if you try and engage with a community of people who are struggling to keep their business afloat and their heads above water, and you do so at the most inconvenient time, you will never get the response and engagement required. So take the time, be aware, and connect. And I know most of you will have the same experience that many of us do. Car parking, rates, and rubbish bins are the first things that everyone wants to talk about. And one of the great things about being a consultant is we can say, thank you so much, we'll pass that on. But today we really want to talk to you about your shop front. Today we really want to talk to you about vacancy and how it's impacting your space. And as we've mentioned before, you know, a loved and cared for space improves the broader community. And of course, then your regional brand value, tourism, and potential inward investment in your local community. So lots more to say. Try to condense it as much as possible. But I hope that gives you some food for thought and a little inspiration, because a project like ours can be done at any scale, whether it be one shop or 20. And it's really important that if it is done, that it's done with passion and it's done with the community on board. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Angela. And that was brilliant. Thank you. There's just so much in that. And it's great to see all of the questions coming through as well. I'm just very conscious of the time, and I'm hoping that you will all want to stay on beyond the 7:45. I think we're going to have to expand these to 8 from now on. But I'd like to introduce Sam Chowdhury, who's our Vice President at Mainstreet Australia, and she's also a leading placemaker and urban planning expert. She's currently also working with the City of Boroondara. Sam, I've put you on the spotlight, but I'd like to just throw to you. Maybe we can start with just some of your observations on both of those presentations.
Sure. Well, I'm super lucky and privileged to have worked with Ching Ching throughout my career and with Ange. And obviously inspired and totally fangirl both of you. I think my observation, obviously over the years working with Ching Ching and then continuing to see the work that she's been doing over the last decade or so is to see how relevant her work has continued to be, like even in the face of changing consumer behaviour, retail, impacts, COVID. I mean, the need for her work, she's been busier than ever, as some of you may know. She's hard to get. I almost sometimes have to filter clients for her. And that just says it so much. I think there's been over the last few years, I think in the last 5-6 years since I've been sort of I worked abroad for a bit, and I managed a business improvement district abroad in Chicago, and I learned a lot managing a very large precinct, a heavily tourist dominated nightlife oriented precinct, coming back realizing that there's lots of different gaps, I guess, in the way we manage and market our main streets, and because we have a slightly different, I guess, governance approach here to a business improvement district has a bit more power than I'd say just a special rate levy. The work of what Renew and Ching Ching and I guess maybe some other consultants do is it's almost like there's so much work out there and there's so much to learn, but but I think there's just huge opportunities to package up and go deeper into these training and I guess remind people who are working in local government or marketing coordinators or new traders association coordinators, is like there's all this knowledge out there that exists, and it's just a matter of like reminding everyone of these amazing resources that you can actually just if Ching Ching's not available, however, or Ange, or that there's all this stuff out there that people are just, I guess, just desperate to be across and learn again. And it's just showing, like, if they're interested even in this webinar and then going forward, is that, I'd love for Mainstreet or us going forward is to just I guess contemporize some of this, just make it more accessible, whether it's just through little modules or just quick cheat sheets or things that council and coordinators can use to just get out there, maybe let it drop the traders or share it on socials. I think, it's very important to continue to build capacity of traders as I guess some of the old long-term mum and pup brick and mortar businesses start to age out, new generation come in. There's all these things that they can still really glean and learn from.
Absolutely. If I can just jump in there, Sam, I guess that's such a good point. And this is what we do as well at Mainstreet, is to try and get more support and advocacy to try and do more of this work at scale, right? So I guess to you, Angela and Ching Ching, how do you go about that first engagement piece of getting that support, whether it's from, council or landlords or developers? Like, what's your your tips or your advice there in terms of getting the support and the engagement to do more projects and to do more of these types of activation and visual merchandising projects across our towns and main streets? Angela, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I guess the first thing is understanding if the project idea is feasible. And not all good ideas are actually going to work everywhere. And so when I came into Renew, one of the first things I did was implement, if somebody wanted a larger scale project that wasn't sort of meant or smaller micro project in a town, we undertook a scoping study to actually understand the appetite to participate.
Yes.
And it goes without saying that I can find people who want low cost or free rent, right? I can find a council who wants to do something for their traders, but can I get property owners and agents on board? Challenge. So I like to do scoping studies for pretty much any project that we're doing. And that could be one day on site, you know, with engagement, or it could be a large piece for the state or the federal government, way too thick, you know, sort of talk.
Oops, we've just got a bit of a glitch with Angela. I'm sure she will come back to us soon. But maybe we can jump to you, Ching Ching. Yeah,
we've had a couple of questions, about whether generally they're business led or council led and funded, and sometimes, and you would know a lot about some of this, getting support, you know, well, getting the interest of traders. Sometimes you can't get them on board, even like if there's some money available, right? Yeah. Sorry, Ange, you froze for a bit. We've jumped to Ching.
All good. I've hit YouTube children time on my internet connection for the community around me, so I apologise, guys.
Do you want to finish what you were saying, Ange? I mean, I'd hate to...
Look, I just think the big thing is to understand the scale and scope before you begin of a lot of a projects. Understand the appetite, because if key stakeholders aren't going to buy in, maybe no matter how great the idea is, you need to pivot. You need to look at something else, because just because it sounds great or it's a good PR opportunity doesn't actually mean it's going to fit. And I think that's really my biggest piece of advice, is actually start it first and find out.
I think that's great. And I love, Ching Ching, I loved your tips in your final slide when you said, you know, start small and just maybe pilot, get one trader to jump on board and just pilot it with one trade. I think that's fantastic, and see if you can just get one on board and then everyone else will hopefully follow. Is that how you've done a lot of your work in the past?
Everybody loves a before and after, and if we can show them a real one, I think that really demonstrates a lot. And then the how much does that cost question, if that can be answered with the, oh, that only cost $500, or that only cost $2,000 to do X, Y, and Z, I think the appetite then grows for it. But a lot of the times our projects start from the visual audit, and I hate the word audit because it makes me think of an accountant, but assessment, you know, the checking things out, you know. So, you know, as Ange said, you know, walking up and down the street either with a coordinator or with you know, someone from council, where we can then visually have a look, you know, have a look at, well, is there something that needs to be done here that can be, you know, thrown back onto the business as a way of supporting them, but also getting the benefit of, you know, their improvement also improves the place. And I think these sorts of investments are far cheaper than redoing the whole concrete footpath. Far cheaper.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, street.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And that's so critical, because we'll often get community members, or say if when in like a from a like say you've got a place plan for an area, a lot of the focus on public realm or council assets, that's so expensive, that takes time. And what's so quick win is with the businesses. And so I think that's where the power of transformation for the kind of work that you're doing is actually, it can often be much easier for a council officer or eco dev or a department to spend 20, 30 grand on that than $1 million streetscape upgrade, which often the traders are like, oh, you're going to come and rip up the street.
Right,
so this is much easier win, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so how these... so I can see that in some of the comments there's something about a question about funding. Are they?
Yeah, I might. Yeah, if it's okay, Ching Ching, I might actually just conscious of the time. Let's whip through and make sure that we're answering all of the questions. So thank you to everyone for your comments. So the first one is just around your slides and whether you'd be prepared to share them tonight, Angela and Ching Ching, with everyone. Yeah, is that okay? Yeah, excellent. Okay, thank you so much. A question here from Gianna Murphy to you, Ching Ching. Can you tell us how receptive were traders to the window display training?
I mean, this is also case by case. Not all traders are created equally. Not all of them have the same skill set, and certainly not all of them have the same level of creativity and skills. But some of them have great staff. So it's also recognizing with them that it may not be you that takes on that role. It could be your staff. They could be upskilled in visual merchandising, and that could really just add a whole nother layer of fun to their job. With visual merchandising, it can be, different ways that we can engage with our businesses and upskill them, whether it's through a workshop or physically getting into their store and showing them. Here is your window before. Let's empty it. Let's put some new stock in and move things around. And this is how it can look this way. This is how it can look this other way. These is what you might need for props, some basic props. You might spend $100 max and you can use these over and over again. But it depends on the trader, because I remember a few years ago, I was working with an Indian grocery store, and grocery stores and visual merchandising don't always fall in the same sentence. And so he was looking at me strangely like, you want me to do what? Meanwhile, he had stock in his window that had far gone past their expiry date, which I'm like, you're selling food. This is not good. And 80% of the window was covered in phone card stickers and posters. So this is going back a few years. So in the end, the best way to upskill him was we went shopping. We went to IKEA. We bought an Expedit shelf. I put it in his window, built it with him, and said, you've got 8 little windows now. Can you just put different stock in them and change that every 2 weeks? And then do a little pile on top. That's it. And clean your window. So while it may not be a Jones the Grocer kind of type display, but it looks neat and it looks clean, and he's changing it all the time, and he can do it. So the skills that we're upskilling, sometimes it could be as simple as just reminding them to clean, to rotate, and to just put them in neat little bundles. Just if you have to line them all up and repeat the same stock across and have them grouped in different colors, that could be as much as they need to get them going without exceeding their, the sort of expectation that we might have.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ching Ching. Ange, just a question for you, just in relation to the project that you spoke about in Fitzroy Street. This is a question from Penelope. Hi, Penelope. Thanks for joining us tonight. Can you tell us how long did it take to implement that project, and what were the challenges or some of the problems that you had in doing it?
For Fitzroy Street specifically, it's quite a unique street. It's a fallen icon of Melbourne, if you will. It should be the street that connects the CBD to the sparkling waters of Port Phillip Bay, and has always been famous for its nightlife, and previously used to be famous for its food and beverage trading. And as Melbourne has diversified, the city has come alive, all of those things have changed. Fitzroy Street found itself in a position of long-term vacancy long before COVID hit. This was something that sort of was a slow burn. And so it began with the former CEO, Peter Smith of Council, inviting me to an evening with the Traders Association, where I did a short presentation and an open Q&A. And openly, he asked them to vote on the spot if they would like me to do a scoping or feasibility study of the area, of which they all unanimously agreed. Because I think what they understood was they didn't have to do a full buy-in. They would get some kind of report. So in doing that, I went out and spoke to all of the property owners and agents on the street, as well as the traders, local creatives, different council departments, also key, because we fall across arts and culture, economic development, placemaking, planning. So actually bringing all the council departments into one room and explaining what we were doing and how it actually aligned to all of the pillars within their own separate strategies. So we got everybody on board to understand the benefits. But one of the key things is going out there and asking, well, look, if you don't want to be involved, can you tell me what the barriers are for you to actually participate in this project? I'm not asking for you to change your mind. I'm just asking why. Because the information that council receives is often really different, because it's the same loud voices speaking versus what the chamber might hear versus what the existing traders were. And what we found in that was that the property owners did want to participate, but what they didn't want to do was give their space directly to council. There was too much interference and pollution in their relationships over other council issues, bins, parking, all those things we talked about earlier and more. And so one of the things that came out of the scoping study was that they would like to engage on a project like this, but they would like to do so with a third party like us in the middle, which meant when they gave their property to the program, they weren't signing it over to council to manage where they already had a fractured relationship, but instead they were handing it to a third party. Now, there are great things in that. As a registered charity, there are potential tax breaks. There are lots of things that can assist when you have Renew involved in the equation. But ultimately, that was the main feedback, where we're not quite okay with council, but we do want them to fund it. How can we get there? And a lot of the comments we got were, oh, the property owners around here, they're so stuck in the mud. They won't reduce their rent. They're not making an effort. When I went in and interviewed those agents one-on-one, when I went in and I interviewed those property owners one-on-one, I found that multiple sites had reduced their rent by over 45%, gone from 5-year leases to 1, and they still couldn't get anyone in those spaces.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
There's no foot traffic. How do you have a business that relies on perishable items if you don't have visitation? And so that was one of the things we found. We also found that there was a lot of misinformation. And when we actually got time to sit down, not like obviously we do group chats and presentations, but one-on-one. That meant we got an honest response from all of our stakeholders instead of one negative drop in a community meeting spoiling the whole
yeah, absolutely.
And so I would encourage whatever project you're doing, whether it be roller shutters or something like a Renew project, because you don't need us, you can do it yourselves. It's really important to understand the importance of direct engagement, because what you'll find is then you don't get the hearsay or the title. What you actually get is the detail, and the detail is what's important in a project.
What's important. Absolutely. That seems like a fantastic note to sort of wrap up and finish on. I'm conscious that we're right on 8. We're 15 minutes over and we haven't even scratched the surface. I'm sure there was many more.
Session 2.
We might have to do a part 2. But look, I do, as a final call out, if anyone has a burning question or anything else they would like to say and ask of our panelists, please quickly come off mute now. If not, I will start to do the wrap up. And in wrapping up, I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists, to Ching Ching Lee, to Angela Simons and Sam Chowdhury. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was so insightful, and I can just see just the passion and the expertise and everything that you bring to the jobs and what you do for activation and Mainstreets is, it's just so inspiring. So we're absolutely thrilled to have you as part of the Mainstreet community. And thank you for joining us tonight. And thank you to everybody else around the tiles for joining us tonight. We're really thrilled with how these nighttime webinars sessions are going. Please do give us some feedback. We'll be sending a survey out tomorrow. We'd also just like to give a call out and just remind you of some other Mainstreet Australia initiatives that are coming up. Don't forget, we've got Mainstreets of Australia Week. Hopefully you've organised some activities to run from the 16th to the 21st of May. Or if not, you can come to our gala, our awards gala, which is taking place on the 19th of May. We've also got our conference coming up later this year in Hobart in August. So much going on. And thank you again for tonight. I feel like we might have to do another part 2 with some more case studies, some more slides, and some more time for you, Ching Ching and Angela, because I'm sure you could have talked some more, and you as well, Sam. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
we'll see
everyone.
you next time. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye for
everyone.
now.
Bye.
Bye.